testified today in front of the House Judiciary Committee. That's Jim Jordan, who's the chairperson. And it was that basically the FBI was corrupt in the way it put together Crossfire Hurricane, which was the investigation into whether the Trump campaign worked with Russia to subvert our election in 2016. All right? That's what it was. And and Durham came to the conclusion the FBI was corrupt. All right? They did all kinds of terrible things, some of them illegal, to try to get Trump. The goal of the Bureau was to get Trump, take him out, using all kinds of underhanded methods. So the Democrats on that committee, of course, are going to not accept that. And even though it's true beyond any reasonable doubt, they won't accept it. And this was a fairly intense exchange. Go.
Your reputation will be damaged. As everybody's reputation who gets involved with Donald Trump is damaged, he's damaged goods. There's no good dealing with him because you will end up on the bottom of a pyre. I yield back the balance of my time.
Sure.
Can we presume the gentleman's undecided on how he feels about the former president?
Gentlemen, witness can respond. Yeah, my concern about my reputation is with the people who I respect, and my family and my Lord. And I'm perfectly comfortable with my reputation with them, sir.
That's a good answer. Steve Cohen is a radical leftist, Democrat from Tennessee, interestingly enough, but in a very liberal district, of course. But he, Nadler, Schiff, they all did the same thing. It doesn't really matter if the FBI broke laws and was unethical and it got warrants they shouldn't have gotten and all of that. We don't care because we hate Trump. And our hatred of Trump overrides any respect for the law. And Cohen said it. He said, oh, you're thrown in with Trump. No, Durham just, after 4 years and all that money, this is what Durham found out. That the FBI committed crimes and did things that they shouldn't have done. When I say committed crimes, you cannot swear, okay, to a federal judge on a warrant basis that things are true when they're not true. And that's what they did. That's what the FBI did. They put false things in a document given to a judge to get a warrant to eavesdrop, to tap. It's a crime. And he did it. Now you say, well, why are they going to be, how come they're being held accountable? Who's going to hold them accountable? Merrick Garland? I told Hannity today, if the Republicans win the presidency and at least one of the houses in 24, they could go back and prosecute some of these people on conspiracy charges, like Comey and McCabe and Strzok and other people within the Justice Department. Okay, that could happen. It should happen. There's more to this story than we heard today from John Durham. And so I've been casting around for a guy who has credibility and can explain to us more about this. His name is Jeff Clark. He is former assistant U.S. Attorney General under Donald Trump. You worked for Attorney General Barr directly, did you, Mr. Clark?
Yes, I worked first for Jeff Sessions, and then under Matt Whitaker, and then under Barr.
Okay, so you were there for the whole 4 years. So when you experienced this, you went through this, and you heard Durham and read his report, but you say there's more to this. What's the headline?
The headline is, I think if you're trying to do a hearing, and I took in your talking points memo the fact that it's true, you have to try to simplify things for the American people, especially people who aren't focused on politics, right? So inherently what that simplification does is it turns into a binary, a left-right paradigm kind of thing. So the Democrats are going to say Durham's got nothing, and that's why he only has one guilty plea. His 2 trials failed. This is all an attempt to distract from the indictment against Trump involving Mar-a-Lago and other legal problems of Trump. And the Republicans are going to cast Durham in the light of being the hero who uncovered all of the corruption at the Justice Department and the FBI. And I think that the second part of that story is an oversimplification. I think that Durham failed to interview a whole host of people. You mentioned Strzok and McCabe. There's also Igor Danchenko, Christopher Steele, Priestap, Glenn Simpson, Mark Elias, Rodney Jaffe. None of these people were interviewed, which makes absolutely no sense. Also, from the Durham report, it came out that there was an August 2016 meeting in the Oval Office with Barack Obama, Attorney General Lynch, Brennan, and several others, where it was clear that they were informed that Hillary Clinton was going to create an op to try to paint Donald Trump falsely as being a tool of Russian intelligence, that he was essentially a Russian agent. Well, why weren't they called in? Why weren't they deposed by Durham? So, to me, Bill, what I think this is it has opened more of the kimono. It has exposed more of the corruption than the Inspector General's report from Horowitz that first came out. So it's an improvement over that. But it's not exposing the full depth and evils of the operation that was launched to either prevent Donald Trump from becoming president of the United States, or if he were to be elected, to consume him constantly with a drag on his presidency that sapped all of its strength and had him always on his back foot fighting against these fake allegations.
Okay. If that's true, and it looks like what you said is, because it's a matter of record who was interviewed and who wasn't, then the next question is, was Durham in the tank? Did he purposely not try to uncover more corruption?
I think it's a kind of sophisticated containment operation, Bill, with former Attorney General Barr. I mean, it's no coincidence to me that Barr basically indicated where he thought this was going to head, right? And so he painted this as a kind of soft coup against President Trump, and I think the Durham report is entirely consistent with that. But at no point did I think he ever really was aggressive in saying that this would produce the fall of a lot of people from either the career ranks or some of the upper reaches of the department.
Yeah, if you have Obama and those people, and you would think that Joe Biden would be in that pool as well if they knew that Hillary Clinton was trying to use phony documents to impugn Trump. But how close a relationship did Barr have with Durham? When we think of independent counsels, we think that these counsels don't, they're not taking their orders from a certain person. But how close were the two?
Well, I think there's been a lot of reporting that has come out that they were very close. The New York Times used to talk about how they would have whiskey, they traveled to Europe together, et cetera. So I think that they were working very closely on exactly how this would come out. It's also not a coincidence to me that it took forever for this to be done, right? And given that long list I gave you of people who weren't interviewed, then you really scratch your head about what was going on for all these years.
What were they doing if they weren't going after those principles? So then if that was all true, then the suspicion comes against Barr, that Barr didn't want the country to know the extent of this corruption. Do you believe that?
Yes, precisely, Bill. I think that's exactly where it points. And then I'll point you to Bill Barr's recent interview with Bret Baier, where he started out essentially with a pitch of, well, this was only ever really going to be a report. When he was pressed a little bit, and not too firmly by Bret Baier, he said, well, yeah, sure, if he came up with something, he could pursue prosecutions. But the real point of this was just to write a report. And, I've seen it characterized, I've characterized it myself as, look, we already had one book report from Michael Horowitz, the IG. Did we need a second book report? I think the American people were looking for more accountability than that.
And they were, you're right. But why would Barr want to give cover to his political enemies?
Because I don't really think that they are his political enemies, Bill. I think that we're living essentially under a kind of uniparty apparatus in the United States. And I think that Barr is part of that party apparatus, right? There's a kind of, red team, blue team sort of thing going on of, we're Republicans, we wear R's on our shirts versus D's, going on. But they're largely cooperative on lots of major issues, like a lot of the massive intelligence state we have now in the wake of 9/11, of all the warmongering that's going on, as we see with a lot of the support for Ukraine. And, I think Barr is in that mold. Barr is not a populist Republican who wants to see the deep state, the administrative state, really curtailed. I think he wants to see that continue, and I think he knows that Donald Trump is the existential threat to that system.
Do you think that Trump knew that Barr did not have a motivation to get to the heart of the corruption?
Actually, I don't. I think that Barr is very sophisticated, and I think that Barr wrote an audition memo about the Mueller investigation, indicating that the president couldn't possibly be obstructing justice. It was a very sophisticated and well done memo. I think that on the strength of that memo, he was hired as the Attorney General to replace Jeff Sessions, whom Trump was very frustrated with, particularly because he recused from this whole issue, right? I mean, the whole ball got rolling against Trump in a very serious way after he did get elected president, because Jeff Sessions was convinced to recuse. I don't think he should have recused.
He talked to a Russian ambassador. You were working for Barr. Did you know, when you were working for him directly as an assistant attorney general, that Barr was a swamp creature in the tank, didn't want to uncover massive corruption? Did you know that?
Well, I knew that he had been part of that kind of approach to the world in the Bush 41 administration, where he had been attorney general for the first time. And in particular, because of something, maybe I'll bring this to the attention of your viewers, that Barr had been responsible actually for blocking Ken Starr from getting the Supreme Court seat that David Souter eventually got. So he linked up with, the folks in New Hampshire, Governor Sununu. Now his son's obviously risen in the political world, but Governor Sununu and Barr, they blocked Ken Starr. They got Souter in. Souter was a disaster. We would have seen Roe and Casey reversed probably 20 years earlier, if and Casey would have gone a different way to reverse Roe than the Dobbs decision from last year if that had not happened.
Okay.
I think Ken. So I knew that, but what I will say is I thought, based on speeches that he was giving and my personal interactions with him, that he had turned over a new page, that he realized that America was under threat from a lot of the current radical nature of the Democrat Party and their alliances or their own beliefs in Marxism or Maoist-like thinking. And, so I had hoped that he had changed. But I think what emerged as a result of the Durham investigation, putting a lid on things, and what emerged in terms of how he surprised President Trump and turned 180 degrees around on the problems with the 2020 election, after originally going on TV and saying that mail-in ballots are a huge problem for fraud, I think then I saw that he really had never changed from his days in the 90s.
Okay, and we're going to invite Mr. Barr on the program. He already turned me down once. But if he does come on, I'm going to obviously play some of your sound bites for him. But he's a smart guy, Barr.
He is.
And he's not going to admit to any of this. You know that.
I know that.
Is there a smoking gun against Barr that if you were interrogating him, you would use? Last question.
Maybe Bill, I'll noodle on that one. I think that the fact that he knifed Ken Starr over, a tempest in a teapot.
But that's a long time ago.
It's a long time ago. In terms of right now, right? Unless you got someone who was in his true inner circle, like Durham, to kind of admit what the game afoot was, I don't think we have a smoking gun. But I think there's a lot of triangulation that points to this conclusion, Bill. That's
very, very interesting, Mr. Clark. We really appreciate it. Thank you for helping us out tonight.